Okay, so today I'm going to be making a Unis ring with the bezel, the stone-filled bezel, and I'm just gonna kind of like a sneak peek into what I do. So what I'm about to do right now is this bezel right here. It's not soldered yet, so I have to do that. I'm going to use borax right here. I got a borax cone. Put it in a borax dish with some water, or a ceramic dish. And just grind it down. You get this milky consistency, and that's perfect. The reason I use borax and not chemical flux is because it's just borax. The stuff you get in a jar is a bunch of chemicals and stuff in it. Borax works really good. So the goal here is to flux the joint. You have to sand it too, so that the solder has a surface to flow on. Solder's weird, silver solder. It won't flow at all on a dirty surface. It's actually really useful. Piece of hard solder. You just snip a little bit, a tiny little piece. And it's about 1 millimeter each direction. And if you flux your solder, it'll flow a little better. You don't have to. I've done it without doing that, and it'll flow fine. Still learning how to use this torch. I had used this one up until about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I did all my stuff with this one. What we're going to do now is we're just going to heat up around the edge of the bezel here. We're going to use the bush part of the flame. The reason why you don't want to just hold it over there, 2 reasons, because the very tip of this can get up to 6,000 degrees, and this will melt at like 1,500, I think. And there's a lot of oxygen in this flame, and that will stain the metal. And you got to do a lot of sanding to get that stain out. So if you just go around the outside, you get a lot less of that. And this board I have it on is called a solderite board. Got some epoxy on that, tweezers yet. And the solderite board is like a fire brick. It throws the heat back at the material that you're using on top of it, instead of absorbing it. I mean, it's hot. But see, I'm not sure if this joined right. Okay, this is an improper join. Looking at it, you wouldn't be able to really tell, but it'll pull apart here. See? So we just gotta do it again. What I'm doing now is just trying to borax and solder and just pulse off the join here. That way it's nice and clean again. Now I'm just taking some emery paper and I'm scoring up the edges on the flat part. And this part, you kind of just click the metal back and forth until you get it sealed nice, seated nice. Okay, we're gonna try again. Might not have had it pasty enough. When it's real, when the viscosity is real runny, it will, it'll just drip down the joint and soak into the solderite board. Or vermiculite, I'm not, whatever, I think they're the same. Dip it in this borax here to clean it. And wear glasses and solder, silver solder. You can, but it's difficult. You're not able to see the color of the metal very well. Right now I'm just heating the outside of the bezel with the bush of the flame so I don't melt the bezel or over oxidize it. When you put too much oxygen onto the metal when it's being heated, it'll absorb the oxygen and it stains the metal because I think it pulls the residual just crap that's in the air onto the metal, and it puts it below the surface of the metal. And you have to sit there with emery paper and sand it off with polish. But the reason my tweezer's stuck there is I got some leftover epoxy on them. I think I'm heating the same side. It's with this torch, it's much harder to see the flash when the solder flows. Because once you see that flash, you can pull off the heat, because that means the joint is successful, or it's at least flowed. And the solder, since it has more impurities in it than the silver, it will melt at a lower temperature, and it'll melt much quicker when it melts. So you can burn up the solder. There'll still be solder there, but it'll be really fragile. And it'll just break instantly. Okay, it's all dirty. You can see that this blue hue right here, that's the borax, and this black and red, that's the borax. I have to put it in the pickle pot right here, and that's just some acid. It's food grade, so it's not that harmful. It'll still burn your fingers up. You just mix that with water and you heat it up, and this is actually a crock pot. But you heat it up in there, and when it gets to operating temperature is what I guess you would call it, it'll get all this crap off and make the silver nice and bright white in 10 minutes or less. I have it on that little silver stick because you don't want to put anything other than the metal you're putting in your pickle because it will contaminate it. And everything else I have, these are stainless steel. And I don't know what the deal is with stainless steel, but it just absolutely ruins the pickle solution. But this is what it looks like when it comes out. We have to clean this up with a file and some emery paper, and then we can form it. So this isn't perfectly flat, and if I leave it flat how it is, when I go to get a file, and when I go to file it, there'll be hills and valleys that I'm going to end up running into, and it won't file evenly. So you kind of want a little bend, a little arc right where your joint is. What I'm filing off right now is just excess solder. And any solder that you leave, any surface solder, when the piece starts to patina, you're going to see it. If you do your joint good, you're not going to see it. And you can see where I just filed. That's right where the joint is. So now we need to make it look kind of like that, but more like this. This is the ring it's gonna be. It's my 4th or 5th one making. People really like it. It's named after my great-grandmother, Eunice. Jewelers, we got all these fancy pliers. The most about this trade is all the pliers. You you'd think, okay, there's like 3 or 4 kinds of pliers. No, there's hundreds of kinds of pliers. I've got my other ones over here, but these little guys are a lifesaver. So this one is just a regular needle nose, like what you'd use for fishing. This one is kind of like a needle nose, but you can see it has a weird tip on it, and that's really good for getting in tight spaces when you need a fine point, but you don't want it to be, you don't want the thickness to become wider as you stick more material in. You understand what I'm saying? And then you have these ones, which are oval forming pliers, which are really handy for doing the peaks of these. Then you have these ones kind of for handling round wire or even flat wire. It doesn't mar up the surface on round wire nearly as much as these two would. But essentially I'm just gonna try to form this as perfect as I can by hand. That's how all of them are done, all the Unis style. I don't really know another way to do it. This hammer right here, this is called a goldsmith's hammer. I got a chasing hammer, it's in the other room though. This is a little mini anvil. If you're just starting off, don't hesitate to get one of these. They are so useful. It's way better than this. So this is a cast iron core with hardened tool steel case, and this is just cast iron. Honestly, I could probably dent this if I hit it with a ring on my finger. It wouldn't feel good, but and the flex shaft. If you're hesitating getting one of these, just get one. Just do it. It's much better than a Dremel. And get the ones with the 2 hand pieces. This is a Jacob style collet, which is like what you would get on like a DeWalt battery powered drill. And then this one, all you gotta do is flip this lever, and it's anything that's 3/32 will fit in here. Much quicker. So the bezel, it's coming along. There's little just kinks like that you have to work out, and it's kind of tedious, which is why I like having the both. Having multiple pairs of pliers is just, it's more useful than you know. So what I'll typically do though is I'll get one side pretty perfect. I'll take a piece of sheet silver and the perfect side down, and then you flush solder that, and then it's much easier to manipulate the top part because the bottom part is secured how you want it. So this is imitating like a diamond or a sapphire or something. You can see on this one, it's maybe you can't, but it's off kilter, just the tiniest bit from where the peak is on the top to where it is on the bottom. It bugs me, so you really got to get that perfect. So both sides are going to look pretty perfect, but one side will be better than the other, and that's the side you want to be soldered down first. So this side that you're seeing is the better of the two. And now I'm going to pause this part out, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a file. I'm just going to make sure that's nice and flat. Now we got that flat, we have to clean it up with some emery paper. And it's just the reason you use the emery paper, I like it because it puts those grooves in there, unlike the file, which takes a shaving. And my file's really dirty. Like I said, any kind of debris or dirty surface will allow solder to flow successfully. It might flow around it, but it's not going to be a good join if the contact between the two metals is dirty. Alright, so you get your little piece of silver here. Then you want to clean this piece off too. You can find your piece of emery paper. And if you want this base to be showing, you might want to go through the grits of the sandpaper and get a relatively decent shine on it. I used hard solder on the bezel itself, not this plate. I could use hard to do it, to solder it to the plate, but I don't want to risk letting that solder go. So I'm just going to use medium. And the grades between medium, soft, and hard solder, they melt at slightly different temperatures. You really want to kind of be careful with this if you plan on using this silver that's left over, because you don't really want the solder on the silver if you're going to be using it for something. So this time what's going to be different with how I solder this is I'm not going to put a little pallet of solder on. I'm going to hold it with the tweezers. Pretty sure the package just got delivered. It's my dog going nuts. Using the bushy part of the flame around the outside. When the borax starts to melt, you're right near that temperature where you got to solder. Right there, I just hit it. Okay. I think I got that pretty good. We'll just get a little more on there. All right. when you can see it flow completely around inside and out, you know you've got the join successful.